Brad Lunds of the Lens Group and the Apiary Studios sheds light on the new wave of office space and the opportunities vacancy has presented. He also dives into an animation project only Lakeland has. We hope you enjoy.
In Our Expert Opinion podcast is brought to you by SVN Saunders Ralston Danzler Real Estate, a full-service land and commercial brokerage with over $4 billion in transactions since 1996.
Welcome back to In Our Expert Opinion podcast. This is the second time I will be doing an intro because my co-host
So graciously let you do it again.
redo. My guest is Brad Lunds with the Lens Group, who I'm very happy to have on here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming in. And I feel like you came in on very short notice. I think I asked you a little over a week ago.
Well, it worked out well, scheduled. So
I feel like my schedule's wide open, you know? Your schedule is the one, I feel like you actually do work.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can't say the same. But one day, one day I'll get there. So you are an architect,
I am.
and I want to say it's like interior design. Is that what your firm?
So we're full service design, architecture and interior design. So the Lens Group has completed work in 32 states in the District of Columbia. I currently hold licenses in multiple states. Most of our work right now is Central Florida, just because of the economic conditions.
Yeah.
Wrapped up a project in New York probably about 5 months ago.
What kind of project was that?
Themed entertainment.
Oh, okay. So I feel like you would know overall how the markets are doing for the whole country, not just for Florida or Lakeland or Central Florida.
And there's yes and no. I mean, I don't have empirical data you as an economist looks and says, well, what's the M2 and then what's the...
Yeah.
So I can go more off observational, and then there's two sides to it. What is the demand off market sector? What are we getting for proposal requests? What are we getting for construction being executed, the shovel-ready projects? But labor is also a big piece too. Labor is a really strong indicator of what markets we want to enter or continue investing in marketing, or can we recapture labor, because labor has been a huge problem in terms of allowing growth to happen at a higher rate.
Well, what's the problem?
There is not enough people.
Yeah. Do you think it's because they're not? Because I feel like there's this wave in general of people being like, well, I'm not being paid enough, so I'm not going to work there.
I think it's partly, but we also saw a lot of people elect not to come back into the workforce.
Yeah.
We were seeing a shrinking number of people total available to work with the retirement of the baby boomers. So there's a gap. We're dealing with, in our industry specifically, a large gap of the 20 to 35 year experience people, because 08, 09, 08 really cut out those people, because and I'm part of that group, we were 10 years out, we were the expendable piece, so people found other industries then to pursue. And then when demand increased, they weren't there. So how do you offset that?
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
I would not.
I feel like if you did know, you probably wouldn't be sitting right here.
No, I would not be.
You might be the one being interviewed of an expert.
No one would ever see me. I will just leave.
You'd have like an island?
Yeah.
Or are you more of a remote forest person?
I would be south of France person
Okay.
in a chateau. No one would see me.
So, Brad, I can't help but notice that your last name also matches the name of the company. What is your capacity within the company?
I am currently the CEO.
Okay.
The company was founded in 1987 by my father.
Okay.
I came over in '09. I was in equity track position at a larger firm. Had never worked with my father. My father had two other partners, and he had built a company that really was not reliant on a strong Polk County presence. It was relationships, and then he followed those relationships around, and he was the one that started to do more of the regional and national components. I took over, I want to say in 14, leadership, did a number of acquisitions and mergers to pull together because of labor and then diversify our market share as well.
Okay.
Short answer.
Okay, so I know on our phone call we had talked about the office sector, and I was saying that basically occupancy it's low. So, I mean, it's like at 20% now is unoccupied office space, which is a really high number. And I know obviously during COVID, people weren't going into the office. And I mean, there were even large companies in Polk County that were vacating large office spaces, over 100,000 square feet. And obviously that's concerning for commercial advisors. I think it's concerning because I don't know what they're going to do with those buildings or who's going to go into them. But you had a different kind of take on that. And it was kind of encouraging to hear because maybe it makes me think that these buildings won't be vacant and like falling in on themselves.
So it is interesting because there was, in 19, we were doing a very large downtown 8-story structure. And that really was one of the last pre-COVID offices. We saw a real strong decline in 21, 22, but recently, and office would make up in the heyday probably about 20% of the portfolio. And that's corporate offices. And we have now gotten back to that number. We've got a lot of interior renovations, and it may not be filling new businesses, but it is a retooling. And what you're seeing is a workforce that's desiring different conditions. There are different work schedules. We're all struggling as leaders to understand what does work from home mean? What are the boundaries that we're trying to set up for work-life balance? How do we create that? One company we're working with runs a hybrid 8. That means 8 days a month that those people are in office. The balance are remote. But you have to create a sense of identity for those people when they sit and are grounded within the space. And then what are the amenities that are needed? And we often just think that the office space, in the late 2000 or, 2010 can just be retooled. We went to that open office scenario. We went to benching, and now we're seeing a return back to semi-private and private, but a sense of ownership and a sense of place. And we've also started to understand, as we being generally, the need for physical space to collaborate. We were so reliant on Teams or Zoom, and you're as guilty as I am of this, just turning off the camera and the mic, muting yourself and saying, yeah, I'm paying attention, but what are you doing?
Yeah.
You're doing something else. You're answering emails, you might be whatever you're doing, but we don't read the nonverbal language. And so we're finding that running those hybrid 8s or running a more hybrid work scenario, the collaborative component and the need for meetings are more effective. So there's a return back to having office and the need for it.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I know that there's like a lot of pushback from people who don't want to go back into the office. And so I think I haven't heard of this hybrid 8 before. But I kind of like it. It's like giving people an option. But you said it's 8 days a month?
I mean, I personally, we run contact hours. So we've got contact hours to allow flexibility for people that are doing childcare on the front end or childcare on the back end. Cost of, employers are struggling with what are the pieces that matter to our employees to keep them employed, because if the cost of childcare is high, what's the value of putting in a 40-hour work week if half your paycheck is going to childcare?
Yeah.
So what are employers doing to adjust to it? Because at this point with the labor market, because it's shrunk. How do you attract the right talent?
Yeah.
It's always been a question. And what we're seeing is we're seeing our clients really conscientious about meeting those needs and understanding individuals and what they're required to do, what they want to do, the boundaries they're setting, and then bringing them together.
So, I mean, what are the amenities that you're putting into a place that is a hybrid 8?
So we're doing a lot more soft seating. I really hate some of the Frankenstein words that happen, but residential it's taking a hospitality level of design and creating a residential element. There's creating pods, creating small neighborhoods, creating this flex space, because one of the things from work from home was the convenience of sitting around. We had another client that we built it around kind of a kitchen, use food as a gathering point.
Okay.
And it's an old, cattle raising in Australia. There's too much land, you just couldn't put up fences. So what they did to keep the cattle together was they just put points of food. And that's how it kept the herds together, was the food was the points to collect it. So the same idea is that you're using what is something that we're all doing, and it's either coffee,
Yeah.
but it's not a break room. Like, it's not the break room of the early 2000s where it's,
There's a microwave in there and like a mini fridge.
yeah, and some guy's putting fish in it and pissing everyone off.
That his name would be Augie Schmidt.
I just met him.
Yeah, you did. But he would.
I'll go back down there and talk to him.
I would love to like microwave a Brussels sprout.
Brussels sprouts also.
Disgusting.
Like fish and Brussels sprouts was a lunch of choice.
It's not that I
in the
don't
old
like
office.
those things, but you do that in private. You don't do that to other people.
Well, then just open up a jar of sauerkraut and it's like, boom.
I'd almost rather.
Hit them all.
So when we looked at, there was a project, we did the NOAA Aircraft Operations Center.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting project because it had a civilian workforce and then a commissioned officer workforce. And it was highly vacant because of deployment. But what are you doing to create points? We did this one area, and we're working with GSA guidelines where you have X number of square feet that you can use per person. So we created smaller workspaces, then reallocated some of those spaces to these collaborative zones. And one of them was positioned right between where the scientists were, and then you had some of your flight ops. So pre-flight missions, it was a little couch area with stand-up. So it created a very informal setting to walk through, but it was a presentation piece. Bezos is really big on this with his Blue Origin facilities, where he creates something called the living room. And the living room is where they present ideas. It's in some of the facilities, it's located upstairs. And what you're doing is anyone can come hear what's being pitched or talked about, so that you get that tangential thought, you get that horizontal thinking. Because if you have someone who is instead of just saying, okay, you do commercial real estate, you do industrial, if you're talking about what's happening, you can pick up a piece from
Yeah.
that perspective. So it allows that viewpoint. So it's really leveraging what the office can be.
Yeah, yeah. We kind of have, well, we have a sales meeting every Monday where people can like talk about their properties and everything. And even though I don't do like ranch or timber, I still hear about those things. And so I get to pick up, what everybody's talking about. So it kind of sounds like that.
It is to a
Yeah,
degree.
yeah.
You're doing either a sync up, or you're doing
Yeah.
and then it's also, hey, here's an idea of what, like, if you're presenting something on a ranch property and you're coming in from a commercial side saying, hey, wait, because of these elements here, perhaps we could carve out and sell this for commercial.
Yeah.
It's having that viewpoint, because while you diminish that you're not an expert, you are an expert. You have your pieces. So the office, and when you look at workforce, the deep thinking should occur not with people around. It takes average of 7 to 15 minutes if you're interrupted to get back into a deep thinking mode. So if you have the opportunity to work from home and do your deep thinking there, and you have that rhythm and pace, but you're coming into office for the social collaborative component, that's the viewpoint that office is being seen as.
And so I think you already mentioned this, but are you building new offices or are you
A lot of it's
redesigning?
it's retooling
Okay.
right now. We do have some smaller commercial. We're not seeing spec office like we used to.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot of spec industrial. That's also, I mean, given our location, that's just something that you see. We are also seeing a lot of adaptive reuse. So it's understanding we're getting asked, hey, we've got this building. What else can we do? And oftentimes in central cores and in downtown environments, you want to have a mixed use. So you have a 24 occupation or 24-hour occupation versus just having office because then at 5 p.m. everyone leaves. And
Right.
it's empty. So
Right.
how do you create it's a balanced portfolio.
That's interesting. I don't think I've ever. So what is an example of that?
So when you look at it, sometimes it's adjacencies.
Okay.
Sometimes it's verticaled. You're seeing that when you look at what Vinnick did down on Water Street.
Yes.
So by populating with strong residential, he's got the office component and then the restaurant vibrancy, street life. That was a big piece of what Water Street was about. Take downtown Lakeland. Downtown Lakeland, we didn't have residential for so long. We had the small pieces off Tennessee. We had the lofts that came in, and now we're seeing, No Bay came in. I think there's another development off Oak Street. So we're starting to see that evening
Yeah.
occupation as well, so that there's an ownership. So it's, you've got people from Farm Credit or Summit or Publix coming in, and they're there during the day. Then you've got that street level Kentucky, Tennessee, Main
Right.
Street that can really be supported. And then if you go on the other side on Pine Street as well, you're starting to get a strong dynamic. And what you want to do is that's the vibrancy.
Okay.
There's cities right now that because of COVID, shutting down offices, it killed the central business district. And this idea of a CBD is really just, it's a concentrated market. So now you've got vacant offices. What are you doing? Detroit did a really great job with this by bringing offices back in and trying to redo downtown. And it's an intriguing study there. So it's creating that balance.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really difficult, but I think about downtown St. Pete. They kind of have a good mix of residential and then all of those restaurants and offices and other businesses. So yeah, I could see, I know obviously during COVID, it seemed like downtown Lakeland there was nobody there, but I think that was across the board.
Well, no one went out. We were all paid to stay home.
I know, but I feel like some of the restaurants did stay open, which was nice.
No, I mean, everyone adapted. I mean,
Yeah.
people adapted.
Yeah.
Like Marcos did the whole take home. So, I mean, what is it? Opportunity challenges create opportunity. So,
Yeah, they let you take alcohol in a cup.
I think that was one of my favorite takeaways yesterday from what you said, or 2 days ago, whenever it was Linda's like, yeah, 20% vacancy in the office space. And you're like, well, that's opportunity. So it's not a problem, it's an opportunity. And folks in the real estate business, this is an opportunity for them to, find clients that need space, and hey, here it is. It's open, it's ready, here we go. For you, let's redesign it to make it more palatable to somebody coming in. So I did like that.
Yeah, I know. It is interesting because, I think about these like empty malls, for example, and I'm like, what are they going to do? And now they're turning them into apartments, I think, some of them, which I don't know how that's going to work out. I have no idea. I haven't seen it yet, but I've just read about it.
yeah, I've had clients where we've looked at it as location-based entertainment. So LBEs are going in there. You're seeing it as what does a mall have to offer? A mall is a pretty large span open space
Yeah.
that you're pulling across, so that with a ton of parking. So there's a convenience point to it. So what can you put in there? So we're seeing LBEs going in there. There was someone, University Mall, they put View, so they've got a movie studio in an old mall because you've got the span, you've got the height. So they have a virtual studio putting into that space. It's really intriguing what you can do.
Yeah.
If we keep thinking a mall is a mall is a mall, then you're not, then you're going to be stuck in that dynamic and you're not going to be able to see the opportunity and the challenge. But if you say, what are the pieces that go to it? And this gets back to your conversation about, I'm sitting in a sales meeting and the person coming from ranch is going to think ranch. You're coming in from commercial. You're going to see commercial. And so if you start to identify the factors or the dots that lead to it, then you can see maybe there's a pivot that you move this way without much
Yeah.
resistance.
Yeah.
It starts to allow you to change perspective. It's just a reframing.
Yeah. I'm not that great at that. The shift, you know?
Shifting is hard. It's that because we're very linear in
Yeah.
how we want to think. We want to get from A to B, but sometimes we need to ask, is B where we need to be?
B2B.
B to B, B to B. That's a C to B.
B2C. That's interesting. And so with this like new resurgence and interest in office, I mean, are you still, you said you're not doing spec, so you're creating these office spaces for clients who specifically need this type of product.
Or it's taking advantage because a surplus market is not going to create spec.
Right.
Until we see the demand match the surplus and we start to see a need, you're not going to see developers start to say, I'm going to do this speculatively. What we're seeing instead is we're seeing developers coming in and buying existing buildings, retooling it, and then providing it. So it's not a traditional spec
Yeah.
environment where I'm going to do a 10,000 square foot plate. We're going to stack it.
And then we'll put it up for lease and see who comes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is instead saying, okay, there's a building in downtown Winter Haven that's 16,000 square feet. What does it look like? How can we break it up? Does it make sense? Can we do the residential on one floor? Can we do commercial on another floor? What's our fire codes that are required to be met? How can we have mixed occupancy? And what can we do on the first floor? It's intriguing because the developers that are coming in are viewing it in a different way. And I think that we're not at the point where we're ready to drop 3 or 4 office buildings to flood the market with 300, 400,000 square feet.
Yeah.
But we do have those 15 to 50,000 square foot buildings that are vacant, that have the opportunity to be filled. And it takes the developer that has the vision to say, let's retool it.
Are you seeing a lot of, and this could be for anywhere, but are you seeing a lot of like outside developers, not for Lakeland example? Are you having developers from other states come in and saying that they want to do these types of projects? Or is it mostly like local developers?
Yes. It's both. We're seeing regional, we're seeing local, we're seeing national. We've got a project that is led by a local presence, but has an international backing,
Okay.
and they've got a long-term vision of what they think they can do with the property, and we've been working through that for some time. Unfortunately, our craft takes years to see execution. So things that are on the boards now, I can't talk about because it might not break ground for another 2 years.
Yeah.
So that we're seeing a desire, and it has a lot to do with our location, what we've got to offer as Florida. I mean,
Yeah.
Central Florida is just an amazing market. We're insulated a lot in regards to what's happening in the Midwest, what's happening in the Mid-Atlantic. We've got a very business-friendly environment. We have a desirable climate. We've got, housing's being driven by that right now. We've got such a tremendous housing boom. What's the number of people moving to Polk County a day?
Almost 1,000.
No, I think that's Florida.
Oh, what did you say? You said
said
Central Florida?
Yeah, Florida's 1,000.
Oh, Central Florida. I don't remember
Polk
the
County,
number.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
I mean, it's still. I mean, I look at the other sectors of our business which drive that. When we do a lot of fire station and public safety facilities.
Okay.
So those infrastructure elements coming in on fire stations are servicing growth areas or in response to growth.
Yeah.
And so you're starting to see. I mean, we've got like 5 fire stations for Polk County alone that are coming online.
Okay.
So you start to say, okay, if the county is putting this in, they understand based off planning that this is going to occur. we're not alone. Highlands County,
Yeah.
Alachua, Marion, that center part of the state and the resources needed to execute it's because of what's coming.
I mean, it is interesting to see, infrastructure. Or I saw the other day, it was like, if you see a Starbucks going up, get a house near the Starbucks because like that's where everything's going to be. But I mean, a company like Starbucks would have data, and they've done all of their analytics to know where they should be going, and but it's like as soon as you see a McDonald's go up, like you should probably be looking in that location for land or
Yeah,
a house.
it's a total proof of concept. It's a clustering.
Yeah.
So you'll always see like-minded demographic
Yeah.
settle there.
Okay, so then, is there anything else about Office you can tell us right now?
I think that no, not that I can.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's still a little bit of like spec offices because I just don't know how many people are going to come back to the office.
I mean, that's again, we would not be sitting here. We'd be sitting in our private islands.
Yeah.
If we knew the answer.
Yeah.
It's offices are needed. How much we utilize them and why we utilize them is a different question.
Yeah.
You said that you guys have 7 different business sectors. Is that correct, or am I off on that?
6, and if Maggie was here, she would probably correct me tremendously on that one. So healthcare, themed entertainment, recreation. We do have a strong government presence that's been a good stabilizing component with an emphasis on public safety. The multifamily. We do have an aviation and then an industrial logistics. So
Yeah.
office is in there with aviation industrial is
Yeah.
kind of together, and then office, of course.
The industrial sector, though, I feel like every single time I get a phone call, like a cold call, it's somebody asking for flex space or industrial space. Are you doing a lot of construction on that? Yeah.
A lot.
I'm not like getting so many phone calls for like 100,000 square feet as much as it is for like they need 8,000 square feet and like 2,000 of office. So are you doing a lot of flex space?
We are.
Yeah, especially in Polk.
Let the record state for the listeners. Brad is just shaking his head yes this whole time.
Well,
Absolutely.
You said you were filming it, so
Yeah.
I
Oh, yeah.
figured nonverbal was
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Quite a few people watch, but a lot of listeners.
But does that kind of go into what you were talking about with, adjacent or vertical users, the flex space? Because you've got like this like office, and then you've got this warehouse portion. Is that the same?
So that's separate from just straight corporate office. So when you look at, what are sectors that we're really targeting right now? A good friend of mine does aerospace parts. And so he's got to have a front end office, but he also has to have advanced manufacturing. So when you start to see, it's not just distribution and logistics. When you start talking about flex, you have a component to it that is research or engineering, and you need that office space, but then you also need that open space that you're doing storage or you're doing distribution out of, because that piece, or you're doing manufacturing. And when you start to look at all those pieces, that's a really good client to have. That's a great business because it's not just one service out of that whole business.
Right.
It is that entire business.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to need some of those listings though, because that's what everybody's after. That's how I'll get the company to 5 billion.
Why are you stopping at 5 billion? Why not saying take the company to 6? Disrespect 5 like you disrespected 4, and then just go forward.
That was in the 3 minutes that we cut out in the
Yeah, I know.
And we got an
in the blooper.
I
So
know.
the intro says with over 4 billion. Now it says that, but for the longest time it was almost 4 billion, and then I was just told a couple days ago that we're pretty much at 5 already. So
But
I'm
we
gonna
don't, no round numbers.
You don't round numbers. You want to be exact. You want to
Yeah.
be precise.
The
But-
devil's in the details, Chad.
But for the use of an intro to a podcast, where it's probably better to have something that I can use for 6, 8, 12 months, hopefully.
Yeah,
I got to say something.
Who knows?
oh, that's amazing. First off, that's amazing that you've had, that's a problem you've got, that you've gone almost 4 million to over 4, or over almost 4 billion to over 4 billion, and you're eking up like just almost right at that 5, which shows how this market is.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, we're really insulated from a lot of the stuff that's going on in different parts of the country. And I mean, there was obviously slowdown during COVID, but not like what everybody else was seeing. And if, I don't know what's going on in New York, but you said that you just finished up a project there. But I cannot imagine, because I think that their vacancy is high right now as well.
Well, the city is,
Right,
but I mean, the cost of living,
right.
the remote working, and so where have we succeeded as a community here? We have, you look at the state income tax, which doesn't exist. You look at you look at the amenities you have, the climate you have. If I could move here on a New York City or New York City salary, sure as heck I would,
Yeah,
and work remote.
yeah.
There's it's interesting to see how that's kind of shifted.
Yeah. I mean, it's really causing a lot of problems for me on the roads.
Yeah.
Anyways, do you have any cool projects you can tell us? You don't have to tell us like the names, but anything cool that you're doing?
So within architecture,
Or your animation.
so
Studio.
it's, yeah, so when you talk, well, when 2020 transpired, we were in the middle of doing Peppa Pig. We had just February, we started to see the decline in Asian markets and attendance out there. We were doing project, we were just past it. We were at a point to get into design development, so we're getting into the meat of it all. That all got pulled. As part of tooling for that, we had created a really strong visualization department where we were doing real-time rendering with Unreal Engine, really allowing, you drop rides in, you overlay it. I mean, I could talk about it now since it's all done, but it was easy for the board to make decisions because this is what it would look like. And then using not just 3D, but we call it, the industry calls it 4D and 5D design, so you can apply timeframes and costs to it all. When that project was shelved, I'm sitting here with a team I didn't know what to do with. And so we started to play around. What can we use Unreal for? How can we play with it? And just overall, just tapping into creativity. So we treated it like a little bit of a sandbox. We played around in it. We started to do some virtual productions. So the LED walls, building biomes and coming around. And easiest way to say it is Mandalorian uses virtual production. So all the sets are created on LEDs. And then we took and moved that into creating content. So starting, let's say it's been 2 years. We now have 5 different intellectual properties or brands, show concepts that are at various stages of development that we have production partners for and financing that we're looking to find homes for in the next couple weeks, either streaming or linear in terms of broadcast. So that's been something created out of opportunity. The challenge of what do you do with this team? How do you retool the same skill sets and create opportunity?
It's a lot like retooling Office Space.
It is. Well, yeah, and there was a point with the economics that was interesting to it all, because how do you leverage that? How do you pull that time frame? I didn't want to lose staff. Because talent is really hard to recapture. So what can you do to bring talent together? And so we looked at opportunities to retool.
Yeah. But you guys, I want to say I sat through a presentation, and I believe it was your company. Hopefully it was. If not, we can totally cut this out. But there was something that you guys created for like downtown Lakeland. Was it like a virtual?
Oh, yeah. So we did, it's called Catalyst.
Okay.
City of Winter Haven, or City of Orlando has one. It's Unity based, not Unreal based. And you have to go to the location. We are the only city that has a digital twin sitting in a cloud server for anyone to view.
So can they?
Only city on Earth?
Well, currently, because we were talking to someone else that's out in another another colleague who we met through the animation world has been doing this for Covent Garden in London, and it's for developers. So it was created by LEDC in conjunction with the city of Lakeland to give an idea of, hey, this is what something would impact, because we oftentimes have a hard time visualizing it.
Yeah.
When someone says they're a visual person, it means they need a visual, not necessarily that they can visualize it. They like to see that image.
Yeah.
And so let's find a way we can communicate that, because if you've got a project that's under construction or not started, how do you know what is going to be adjacent to it in 5 years? So what can you do to populate projects that are on the boards that are going to be created so you understand the context of what you're going to design to next to? And that was really the goal, was to create a digital twin that could show what the future looks like based off what's on the boards, what are areas of opportunity. So it really targets growth. It shows what was recently completed, so you could filter through that, what recently sold. And that was focused solely on downtown. We've expanded to Disney, or down to Dixieland.
Disney for those
Basically,
in Lakeland.
yeah, basically.
But the queue's as slow as a ride at Disney. You drive down there.
Yeah, I mean, if don't get me started on much. Yeah, I know. So now you're working on Dixieland, you said?
We had just modeled Dixieland.
Okay. Explain to me, is it like a virtual tour? It is, right?
It's a first person walkthrough. It's a model.
Yeah.
So if you do video game,
I don't.
you don't look like you do.
I've got zero, like, hand-eye coordination. So
It's a walkthrough. So you
Yeah.
can control where you go. You can pull up the map. You can dive in.
Okay.
It is something that really leverages that Unreal engine in terms of
Yeah.
how to populate it. We played around with doing some scanning and applying buildings, the photography. It's I always get it wrong. I want to say it's like trying to say anonymity. I just did it there, but there's certain words that you can never come up with. It's not anyway. It's you scan, you take the images, and you put it up there. And we were getting too much flutter, and we found that reconstructing and building the model allowed us a better product that didn't have the Google Earth feel. So
Yeah,
when you
yeah.
go into Google Earth and it's 3D,
Yep.
and it's like this tree that looks like it's really weird.
Yes.
So instead, we can populate it with trees that give you the leaves that rustle instead, and it dapples the light, and it's fun.
Okay.
But this allowed, we ended up modeling all of Dixieland coming down. So this was, and the city really deserves a lot of credit, as does LEDC. No, neither one more than the other, but for seeing a vision to
Yeah.
do this.
Yeah, it's very cool. The presentation that I saw, like I said, it might have been 2 years ago even, but it was very impressive and something obviously that I had never seen before because it didn't exist.
So this is like an animated version of a Matterport, for those who know what it is. Or was that what you were talking about?
It's not Matterport because we've actually modeled it.
Right.
So Matterport, you get that weird feel sometimes. This is a digital twin, so it's creating a virtual replica of what's out there.
And how often is that updated? What's the process that goes through to update when they get a permit for something, or when something gets CO'd?
When the permit comes in, there typically, or there's a project that goes through LDDA or CRA, and they want to put that on there. Or LEDC has a project that says, okay, we want to visualize what this could be. A big part of it, and this all was born out of something we did a number of years ago, and by we, really Steve Boyington and WMB at the time, were helping to visualize this idea of an elevated walk that went across the train tracks and went through where the Summit building is, and showing that the grade could work. That was an idea that was floated. Steve Scruggs jumped on it and said, okay, this could be great. We ended up, through Catapult, merging WMB and the Lunds Group. And as part of that, we started to do these catalyst plans. And it was approaching the city and developers jointly to cover at a bare minimum just the cost to put together these ideas of what could occur, because it gave the commission an idea of saying, instead of this one-off, what do we get out of it? What could happen?
Yeah.
And it was creating more of a holistic understanding of, if it's the Starbucks effect. If you were to put this here, what else clusters? What's the value? How do you drive?
If you build it, they will come. Yeah.
And this is the piece that you need to catalyze to make it happen. If you have Meriton here, what should the properties along Massachusetts become? What's the developer wanting to do, and what's the city willing to support? And help build a visualization for that. And then understand that's really how Summit ended up where it ended up. And there's visions for filling in these missing pieces to grow it.
Yeah. Okay. And this allows you to travel to France several times a year, or England.
Just France once for a conference.
I thought it was like a couple times a year. No?
San Diego and then France.
Basically the same.
I'm going to withhold my Anchorman reference.
San
That
Diego.
is enough.
Yeah. Okay.
Sufficient.
Well, I think that's it.
Is it?
I think so. Really appreciate you coming on. I don't want to say that I'm surprised by how smart you are. It's just surprising.
It still comes across the form.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, thank you guys.
She's like, Chad, cue the music, get me out of here. I've had a shovel in my hand way too long.
Thank you guys for listening. Please rate, review, subscribe. Google Podcast is no more after March, so gonna have to find it somewhere else.
Really?
Yep.
News to me.
Just FYI. So
Bye, guys.
thank you, Brad.
Thank you.